I mean, right now, Biden is ahead in the polls, both nationally and in most swing states. Take the polls with a grain of salt, but it's true. If Biden is this far ahead, as the polls say, Biden doesn't need another debate right now to try to change the course of the campaign, right? He doesn't need to change his message dramatically to change the course of the campaign. From the Biden campaign's perspective right now, things are going well enough for them that they're happier the more people vote right now because they don't want anything to change over the next 15 days. In terms of whether or not there's going to be a third debate, well, President Trump backed out of the second debate. There's only been one debate so far, and it was that first one. President Trump's performance in that first debate was so disastrous, and his polling cratered so immediately thereafter. I'm sure the Biden campaign wouldn't mind a second sip of that tea, but it's a reasonable question, I think, as to whether or not there is going to be a third debate this week. I'm sure the Biden campaign is confident about their candidate's performance, given how President Trump behaved in debate one. But they really don't need things to change much over the next 15 days for things to go their way. The president did have that terrible first debate. He bailed on the second debate last week. I think it also shouldn't be overlooked that last week the president also admitted that he may have broken the rules that he agreed to, which stipulated that he needed to have a COVID test on the day of the first debate. The president was in the hospital, hospitalized for what appeared to be pretty significant COVID symptoms within days of the first debate. The president now won't say whether or not he actually followed the rules and got tested the day of that debate. He says maybe he did have that test, maybe he didn't, he doesn't know. Him breaking the rules in that first debate in that way should presumably have some sort of consequence, right? I mean, if Biden wanted to opt out of debate 3, that seems like reason enough. Today, President Trump's campaign wrote an open letter complaining to the Commission on Presidential Debates about the rules his campaign already agreed to. They also, weirdly, in this letter to the commission, they complained that this final debate, they said they were promised that this final debate that's supposed to be coming up this week would be all about foreign policy and nothing else. And so now they want all of the other announced topics dropped. That's not true. The third debate was never promised to them or to anyone to be all about foreign policy. That is something the Trump campaign made up. The commission said from the outset that the moderator of the third and final debate would choose the topics herself and announce them in advance. That's what has happened. But the Trump campaign is lying about that, saying they were promised it would be all foreign policy. They're complaining about that now, hoping nobody remembers the real story. It seems a little desperate. The president today, of course, also started talking smack, started making personal attacks against Kristen Welker, the widely respected NBC News White House correspondent who is set to be the moderator of Thursday's debate. Of course he did. That kind of whining and complaining in advance and lying in advance about both the debate commission and the moderator, that's like, standard issue Trump campaign tactics, working the refs ahead of the contest. But now with the late-breaking news tonight about what's supposed to happen with the third and final debate this week, let's see what happens. The New York Times was first to report tonight that the Commission on Presidential Debates actually is going to change the debate format a little bit to try to keep it from turning into another 10,000-car pileup like the president careened us all into at the first debate. This is how the Times reported it earlier tonight. Quote, as in the first debate, each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes of speaking time to initially answer the moderator's questions. But while each candidate is using that allotted 2 minutes, quote, his opponent's microphone would be turned off during that period in an attempt to ensure an uninterrupted response. After the disastrous first debate, the commission had said they would consider additional measures to keep the debate functioning within the rules agreed to by the campaigns, including the rule that each candidate gets 2 minutes to answer before being interrupted. That means they warned this is coming, but now they actually made the change. Right? The Biden campaign has no need for this debate. The Trump campaign needs the debate, but they're so invested in the public narrative that the president is the victim and he needs everything to go his own way that, of course, this is a perfect excuse for them to quit the debate, too.